A very good evening once again to all of you who have just joined in. I'm Dr. Neeraj Mankar, Assistant Dean at Flame University and also faculty at School of Business. It's my great privilege and pleasure here today to host Professor Nandkishore. All of us in the business school fraternity especially know him especially because of his connections with Nestlé. He was the global CEO for Nestlé Nutrition as well as executive board director for Nestlé in Asia, Oceania, and Africa. Currently, he is the professor at Indian School of Business as well as London Business School. Professor Nandkishore is an inspirational leader. He's outstanding communicator, marketeer, strategy. So, all rolled in one. He comes in with a rich experience of being on the ground, and his inputs as a business faculty at the ISB and the London School of Business is quite valuable to the set of students and executives that he trains. So I'm not going to take more of your time, handing you over to Professor Nandkishore for winning in turbulent times. So over to you.
Thank you, Neeraj, and hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for that very nice introduction. Yeah, I'm 62 years of age, Indian citizen. After so far about 37, 38 years, I was in business, working in companies all over the world, almost 30 years in Nestlé, various global positions. And then after retirement at age 62, I now indeed teach at the London Business School and the Indian School of Business. I'm a small venture capitalist. I mentor many startups, and I'm on a few boards. And yes, I have a YouTube channel, which is just coming online in the next couple of weeks, called Insights with Nandu. So do log on there as well, and maybe we'll have some interesting learnings and discussions on that forum also. So let me get started by sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back and forth between some slides and live discussions. I'll try to speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and I'll share with you some of my personal learnings, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. Let me open up to my screen share and start the broadcast. I hope you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen? Has something gone wrong here?
Yes, sir, we were able to see it.
You were able to see it. Okay, so let me go back here again and start again the screen share. And okay, so let's get started. So a few years ago, I came across this chart. And this chart is an estimation of the average lifespan of the world's 500 biggest corporations. So in fact, it was done by Standard & Poor, so we can presume they are right. In fact, if you take the chart back to 1920, in 1920, the expected lifespan of a Fortune 500 company was 90 years. By 1960, it had dropped to 60 years, and today it's dropped to 15 years. So when you come up against a chart like this, the first question to ask is this real? Are these true facts from Fox News, or is it fake facts from CNN? That's a joke. So let's examine these numbers a little bit. And it's true, if you look at the Fortune 500 list from 35, 40 years ago, more than half of those companies do not exist anymore. You look at the top 10 companies in the world, and you have the famous FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and so many of the top 10, I believe 7 to 8 of the top 10 are basically companies which are new kids on the block, which have come in the last 30 odd years, plus or minus a couple of years. So there is something happening. In the 20th century, the pioneer of photography was, I beg your pardon, why did that go? Was a company called Kodak. And Kodak pioneered photography. They invented the digital camera. They invented digital photography. Today, Kodak doesn't exist. When I graduated in 1980, there was the Cold War was in full swing. And there was a joke about a Russian general who goes to America and says, we can win any war with the US. All we need is 3 of your generals. And the CIA starts making a note, which generals is he going to mention? So he says, give us General Foods, General Motors, and General Electric. Right? Today, where is General Foods? Doesn't exist. General Electric, well, it's fallen off the S&P 500, and it's probably not far from it's having its own existential crisis. Likewise, General Motors. So something dramatic is happening under our noses. What is happening? And I'm going to round off dates to prove a point, but arguably the 100 years of the 20th century saw more technological change than the 50,000 years of human history before that. So before that, you had agriculture, fire, and the wheel as significant human inventions. And all of a sudden, in the 20th century, you had motorcycles, motor cars, planes, rocket ships, telephones, radio, television, and the world was changing dramatically. Our habits changed. And arguably, the first 20 years of this century have seen more technological change than the 100 years of the 20th century. So today, in this century, all of a sudden, you have smartphones. You can't imagine life without a smartphone. You can't imagine life without social media, without the internet. And yet 20, 25 years ago, these things did not exist. In fact, they did. Well, how many of you actually go to bed with your smartphones? And when you wake up in the morning, globally, the number is something like 82, 83% of people. They go to bed with the smartphones, and when they wake up in the morning, the first thing is, my precious. And then you turn to the darling on the other side of the bed and say, did you sleep well? Or chai lana, or whatever it is you say. But so it's millions of years of human conditioning that's been changed. And yet in 1998, mobile phones were around. There was one company that had more than a 50% global market share of mobile telephones. That was Motorola. Technology changed in 1998 to go from analog technology to digital technology. And this company completely retooled all their factories to launch digital phones. In that 1 year, a new company arrived. And till today, in the home market of Finland, the brand name Nokia means rubber boots. So their core competence was how to make rubber boots. And in that 1 year, they became world number 1. How long did Nokia's leadership last? Less than 10 years. They're gone. So definitely something is happening. What is happening? And if we take a parallel from natural history, what did Charles Darwin tell us? In times of great change, it is not the strongest who survive or the most intelligent. It is the most adaptable to change. If a dinosaur had to pick the prime criteria for survival and dominating on Earth, he would have picked size, strength, and speed. None of those worked in the dinosaurs' favor when the asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula and life was almost wiped out and came back again. And that's when the mammals and you and I came around. So this leads us to the first lesson for us. The key lesson is this today for business leaders. It's change or die. It's disrupt or disruptive. That's the only choice you have. When I started working, we used to be taught, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Today, the lesson is different. The lesson is, if it ain't broken, there is somebody else out there who's trying to figure out a way to break it. So you better find a way to be the one who discovers a new solution to the consumer problem or customer problem you're trying to solve. So, and it is the fundamental task of leadership to prepare the organization for change. This is particularly relevant today as we enter COVID-19. And COVID-19 has just accentuated a lot of the changes that were happening earlier. Some changes have accelerated, some changes have slowed down, but what is for sure is that the economy is incredibly turbulent. This is part of the new reality, whether it comes from technology, economy, natural disasters, earthquakes, COVID, something or the other is going to happen. So a quick poll is, are you concerned that everything that's happening, are you worried about the lack of control you have on your events? And I'd like to launch a quick poll here. Beg your pardon, I go here. And let's quickly launch the poll. And give them just a minute, and then we close the poll and see what the results are. So let's have a look at the results.
Yeah, so we've got about half of them polling. They're still on the way.
That's okay. It's indicative in any case. So can we flash the results up on the screen? Yeah, wonderful. So 80% of the people are really concerned. They believe they really don't have much control over this. Very good, because this brings me to a very interesting insight and learning, which I'd like to share with you, which is this. There are several questions on our mind today. How long is this turbulence going to last? This crisis for COVID going to last? We don't know. Yeah, what we do and what control do I have as a result? What actions can I take? Are there things I should not change? These are all very valid questions. And I'm going to talk to each of these questions in the next few slides. So as a joke, when there's a COVID epidemic, you could always, remember that girlfriend you didn't want to meet or that boyfriend you wanted to get an excuse. Now COVID is a great excuse. COVID, social distancing, stay away. That's a joke, by the way, just to lighten the atmosphere. But let's move on and get serious. How long is this crisis going to last? Short answer, we don't know. Turbulence is the new normal. It's only going to accelerate. This COVID crisis may last for 1 month, it may last for 1 year, it may last for 3 years. We don't know. Chances are it's not going to go away soon. What you need to do is do scenario building and plan for various scenarios. A vaccine is probably a year away before it reaches you and me. And this is probably a transition event in our history, which people are going to talk about for the next 100 years. It's a significant transition event where there will be winners and there will be losers. If you look at the economy broadly, and this is a chart from my bankers, but it speaks to a very interesting insight on who are the potential winners and who are the potential losers. Basically, any business where the consumption is in home, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's hygiene, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's technology, whether it's Netflix, or even medical supply in-home consumption is booming. These sectors have a supply chain problem and a supply chain crisis, or as suppliers of face masks or suppliers of PPE. Their problem is supply chain. How do I supply fast enough for the market? At the same time, anything that's consumed out of home, whether it's travel, whether it's the restaurant business, automobiles, real estate, offices, all these businesses are in trouble. Twitter's already announced that they will have a work from home policy indefinitely. Facebook has announced a work from home policy till the end of the year. TCS has announced that even after the crisis is over, they will require people to come into the office just 1 to 2 days a week, and the rest of the time they'll work from home. This means office spaces are going to shrink dramatically. So that sector is probably never going to go back to what life was before COVID. So what COVID has done is it's accelerated some of these trends driven by technology, and the world is going to be fundamentally different. So as a result, when this happens and the crisis has happened, and in general, businesses moving from the consumer expectations are more and more to go to contactless transactions. And we are way behind in this contactless experience curve. So how did some businesses adapt? Here's how one business adapt, and I'll play a video. It's from Australia.
We have had to close all our restaurants for obvious reasons, for the coronavirus. So I thought to myself, hey, I know all my friends have got these import companies and they can get pasta and I can get sauces and I get all this stuff. And I converted this beautiful restaurant, which is really a beautiful restaurant, into a grocery store. Basically stock, quality and desire for people to come here and buy it, and to really invigorate the neighbours to say, right, they don't have to travel far to get really good quality food. We have to make the best of what we have, and what we can do is we can innovate, change, work with what we have and try and create something. That's the only thing we can do. Adapt. Work with what you have. Try and provide a service to your neighbours. Whatever space we have to just do whatever it takes to get them back to spend with us in different ways, I suppose. And that's all that we can do. So far, so good. And we've been able to maintain our staff.
Isn't that fascinating what they did and how they did? So whenever a crisis happens, the first step is to recognize there is a crisis. This lady recognized there was a crisis. She didn't stick her head in the sand. Now, this is a valid strategy. There are many people even today who basically say, crisis happened, I can't do anything, I have no control, I stick my head in the sand and I can't do anything. Instead, the insight coming from this lady is you can't control the crisis. You can't control COVID-19. You can't control the government response. What you can control is what can you do about it? She had a physical space, she had employees, she had a cash flow to keep, and she converted a high-end restaurant to a retail store. So an ostrich strategy is probably not a very clever way to handle any crisis when it comes your way, or any disruptive change when it comes your way. So the crisis management rules, there are 10 rules. I'll quickly give you a few rules, but I won't spend time on it. First, recognize the crisis, get a team in place, determine what's fact and what's opinion, and you will have plenty of both. Whenever there's a war, there is a fog of war. What's true, what's opinion, both are important, but understand what is fact, what is opinion, and what are the gaps in facts, and put a process to get the facts that you need to get. Once that is done, and the most important lesson here is to remind yourself of what are the core values and purpose that you will not compromise as a result of the change that's happened, or the crisis that's happened, or the disruption that has happened to your business because of a competitor. This is very important. This lady had a few values and principles. She said, I want to keep my cash flow going. I want to keep my employees employed. I want to keep my customers happy, and I want to keep my suppliers engaged with me. And she pivoted her entire business model in 24 hours. And she's a hero for me, the way she's come up and handled this crisis. So the important lesson, I remember the first lesson I said to you was change or die. The second lesson is this: know what you will not change. In a crisis, there's a great temptation to take shortcuts. There's a great temptation to do what it takes to stay afloat in the short term. But in the process, if you lose sight of your core values and your core purpose, then you have to ask yourself, is it worth it, what I am doing? Very important learning. Change everything, but some things you should not change, and that's your values and your purpose. So what control do I have? Focus, as the lady said, on what you can control, scenario plan for what you cannot. There's basically two actions that are possible at any point of time. Whenever any threat faces or a disruption comes our way, one is an action that treats the disruption as a threat, and the other is an action that treats the disruption as an opportunity. So which of these two do you think is likely to work in this case? Now, ideally, I should have put a poll question in over here, which I didn't. But the interesting thing, and you will have people telling you, no, the first thing is respond to it as a threat because you have to stay alive. Other people will tell you, no, opportunity response. And it's very interesting because, let me go back to the slide share. and start again sharing my screen. Okay, so the interesting thing from the Chinese philosophy is this. The Chinese have a word for crisis, it's wei qi. Forgive the pronunciation, but basically it has two symbols, wei, which means danger, and qi, which means opportunity. And the insight is this, the strategic insight is this: a successful response to any disruption views the disruption as a threat and as an opportunity. And in the case, let's go back and look at the Kodak story. Kodak saw there was no way to make money from digital photography. So they closed down the digital photography unit in 1998. And they said, we're going to focus on paper, and we're going to be the leanest, meanest, cheapest competitors out there. And we're going to get everybody to print their photographs on paper. How long did that is a threat response. Go back to your roots, go back to your comfort zone, protect your core business. Okay, just try to stay alive. They lasted less than 10 years and they disappeared. All their patents have been sold, purchased by Microsoft, I believe, a couple of years ago. Fujifilm, on the other hand, they said the same thing. They said, no way we're going to let Kodak fight us on paper. So threat response, we're going to protect our paper business and be the leanest, meanest, baddest guys out there. At the same time, any money that we make, we don't give to the shareholders. We invest it in finding new opportunities to use our R&D capability. So today, Fujifilm is a successful $20 billion multinational, which is big in medical imaging, big in thin film technology, semiconductors, and in paper printing of photographs for high-end photographs. So how does this apply to you, to your case, to the disruption that is coming from a competitor or from the environment or from COVID-19? How does this apply to you? All of this you have to combine at a strategic level, the threat response and the operational response, threat response and the opportunity response with operational flexibility. So I'll give you a couple of stories. 1998, I was in Indonesia with Nestlé at the time, and the economy crashed. So the Indonesian rupiah, which was 2,000 rupiah to a dollar, within 6 months, it fell from 2,000 rupiah to a dollar, it fell all the way to 18,000 rupiah to the dollar. Imagine if the Indian rupee, which is today 70 rupees, fell all of a sudden to 600 rupees to a dollar within a 6-month time period. That's what happened in Indonesia in 1998. A tragic time because, of course, this caused an incredible hardship in the country. There was a lot of inflation because all commodity prices are benchmarked in US dollar global markets, whether it's oil, whether it's milk, whether it's energy, sugar, wheat, they're all imported and benchmarked on global prices. So there was an entire middle class that all of a sudden went into poverty. It was, from a human point of view, tragic what happened. From a company point of view, a lot of companies basically said, Indonesia, not worth it, we're leaving. So many, Kellogg's and many other companies basically left the country, went away. Nestlé, we stayed. We were taking price increases every 2 weeks. We never compromised on the quality of our products. We never compromised on our people. We did not lay off a single person. We were giving salary increases every 2 weeks to help our people cope. Our business declined that first year in dollar terms by 30%. But starting the next year, we were the kids who had stayed, done the right thing by our people, by our suppliers, by our farmers, by our consumers and customers, and they rewarded us handsomely. Because starting the next year, every single year, business was growing double digit, and today it's more than $1 billion business for Nestlé in Indonesia. So this is operational flexibility and being able to maneuver in the short term. How do you get supply sources, build backup supply chains? If this supply chain is not working, where else can you get it from? How do you take price increases? How do you manage dynamic pricing? A very interesting case study. Fast forward a few years, and I was the global CEO for Nestlé Nutrition in Switzerland. And so in Switzerland, in France, we have this product called Nestlé Petit Pot. It's little jars of apple puree, which is for babies. babies of 8, 9 months old. And we discovered in the factory where these glass jars are produced that there were some broken pieces of glass on the line. So we very quickly mobilized a crisis team. We figured out that this glass broken pieces could only have come from the 2 batches that were produced just before. So we rushed to isolate those 2 batches. Some of it had already gone into the trade. So we alerted the authorities. We went on television, on media, we alerted consumers. And we successfully recalled all the batches and we destroyed. So nobody got hurt. We were able to retrieve them all in time. Then what happened? This news was social media already. This was the year 2009. And with social media, then consumers in Portugal started asking, hey, and Spain, hey, listen, do we have to return our product? So we went out, we had to reassure them saying, listen, there's no problem. It was only 2 batches in France. That matter is closed. There's no issues. So you can relax. And then it was Friday evening. And here's an insight, and you can call this Nandu's rule on crisis, which is a real crisis will always happen after 6:30 p.m. on a Friday evening before a long weekend, always. Yeah. So it was 8:30 at night, and I was still in the office. Don't ask me what I was doing there. I had bad habits. So I was still in the office, and I got a phone call from Pete Blackshaw, who is our, who was at the time head of our, amongst other things, digital listening on social media. And he said, listen, there's this Hollywood star called Alyssa Milano. I said, who? I had never heard of Alyssa Milano. Shows you how old I am. So he said, Alyssa Milano at the time had 17 million followers. And she had just tweeted that, and her tweet literally said this, Nestlé is recalling baby jars. In the US, Gerber is owned by Nestlé. Therefore, please run and return your Gerber jars to Nestlé. It came out of the blue. So we had to respond to her immediately. So I took a risk and immediately we tweeted back to her with the statement of what actually happened. And she was so graceful. I'm so grateful for her because she showed her integrity and her grace. She immediately tweeted a retraction and said, Gerber's not a problem. Problem was in France, it's been handled. So the crisis, which could have snowballed into an issue with nothing, was handled immediately with a lot of speed. So all of these are examples of the threat response. So this one is a threat response where you know your fact, you act decisively, you act with speed, and know what your core values are. You do not compromise on quality, on your consumers, and on people. Very important. An example of the opportunity response. Fast forward 1 more year, and I was in India on home leave. This was Christmas, and it was a Saturday. I was in Chennai with my mother, and I got a phone call from Chile. And it's the country manager in Chile, Ximena Corbo, and she called me and said, boss, we have a problem. I said, what's going on? So it turns out that there was a local senator who working with some local labs who was trying to embarrass large companies and the government in the process. And he had done an analysis of Nestlé products and found that the Nestlé, same apple puree, same product, coincidentally, was actually fully compliant as per Chilean laws. Then he tested it against the US FDA, it was fully compliant. He tested it against the European Food Safety Authority, the EFSA laws, and he discovered that this product had certain parts per billion of iprodione. Iprodione is a pesticide that is allowed in the US, it's allowed in Chile to be used in farms at below a certain threshold, but in Europe, it's got 0 tolerance. So he said immediately, so Nestlé, what are you doing? He attacked Nestlé. We said, listen, our product is perfectly compliant. Then he went to the government and said, so Mr. Government, Mr. Nestlé, are you telling us that European babies are more important than Chilean babies? So it became a highly emotional case where legally we were right. Emotionally, there's no way we could win that argument. So cut a long story short, we decided to do a few things. First, threat response, immediately recall the products that were good, went out in public, said, listen, these products are good, there's nothing wrong with them, but to reassure you, we are pulling back all the apple puree in the market. And then we put in place a project working with local farms to now formulate the products to be the strictest of the specifications between Chilean, US, and European. On a per parameter, if maybe here lead is stricter, here zinc is stricter, here iprodione is stricter, the strictest of the strictest. So we put that in place, and 1 year later we launched with a commercial, which I'll just show you. And on an opportunity side, we said, listen, what happened in Chile today can happen anywhere in the world with any politician who wants to embarrass us. So we put in place a project to take this kind of strictest of the strict parameter for baby products, and we went worldwide with it, which we called Project Saturday. You can see how creative I was. I got a phone call on Saturday. I said, we're going to call it Project Saturday. So that's what we did. And we launched with it with a commercial, which was, I'm going to play it here.
Hola, mi nombre es Wilson Maldonado, agricultor de la octava región, y este es mi campo. El trabajo del campo es una mezcla entre pasión y profesionalismo. Hoy más que nunca podemos aprovechar las nuevas tecnologías para mejorar la eficiencia en la producción, ofreciendo así frutas y verduras 100% sanas y de la mejor calidad. Y es en este campo donde comienza el origen de los picados y colados Nestlé.
Colados y picados Nestlé, la mejor calidad del campo a cada frasco, reconocido por la Sociedad Chilena de Pediatría.
So that's what we did. And business after a year actually was higher than it was before the crisis. Our market shares was stronger. Consumer opinion was stronger because we had gone out and we had said, we listen to you, we care for you, and we raised our game even higher than what it was before. Now I'd like to launch a little poll. So let's launch a quick poll. I have another 10 minutes of talk. So the poll should take 1 minute. You can take multiple choices. So I've put my answers in there. Let's give it 1 minute. And these are in the current crisis, which of these would you like to do and choose? We're now moving into the discussion of values and luck and your responsibilities. So, shall we have a look, Professor, at the results? It doesn't matter if everybody hasn't answered. I like this. A lot of you are talking values. I love it. And many of you are talking opportunity and grow my business in the crisis. That's very good to hear. Thank you. Let's go back to the presentation and talk about a few more things before I break for questions and answers. So there are a few more crisis management rules. I'll just leave these with you. You'll get a copy of the slides in PDF version later. You can read it yourself. I won't spend time on this. Let me move and talk about a few other important things. Think back to the last personal crisis you faced before this one. What was your first reaction? Was your first reaction, why me, God, why me? Was it that? Was it, oh my God, somehow I got to survive this? Was it the ostrich response? I'll just pretend it's not happening and it'll go away. What was your first reaction? And it's okay. Listen, we all have these responses. What's important is to recognize the responses and to go beyond it, to move beyond the initial shock and denial, to then accept the crisis and then start to have a threat response and an opportunity response. Talk about the role of luck. And we've all said it. Ah, he is so lucky. Ah, she was so lucky that happened. I was not lucky at all when that happened. We said that, right? I've said it. I'm sure you've said it. Now, at an individual level, it's very difficult to measure the role of luck. At a company level, Jim Collins did this exercise because at a company level, it's possible to measure it. If I have a company and my factory burns down, it's my bad luck, it's my competitor's good luck. If my competitor's factory burns down, it's his bad luck, it's my good luck. And they're both reported in the annual report. So if you go to the annual report, you can actually track the number of good luck events and bad luck events. And what Jim Collins found was over a 20-year period, all companies have the same number of good luck events and the same number of bad luck events. So then what makes the difference between great companies and also ran companies? It's not the number of luck events you have, it's what did you do? When a bad luck event happened, Were you prepared to then recover from that quickly when a good luck event happened? Were you prepared to maximize the opportunity? I posit the same is true at an individual level. Unless you have really bad karma, in which case that is a good strategy to go with. Unless you have really bad karma, chances are we're all going to have good luck events and bad luck events in our lives in roughly the same proportion. The question is not how many bad luck events you had. The question is not, oh my God, COVID happened now, what do I do? The question is, what are you going to do about it? What is your threat response? What is your opportunity response? And I'll tell you a philosophical insight. The roots of my biggest successes, if I look back in my career, I've had successes, I've had failures. The roots of every single one of my biggest successes has been in my biggest failures. I'll say that again. The roots of my biggest successes are in my biggest failures. So problems have a role in your life. They bring to you an opportunity hidden as the problem. You have to move beyond, oh my God, why me? To recognize there is a problem. To threat response, how do I survive this? To how do I now make this an opportunity? So every problem comes to you bearing a gift. You have to be personally resilient with a measured response that balances threat and opportunity. Do not waste a good crisis. A lot of people will treat it with an ostrich strategy or only a threat strategy. You need to go beyond that. So this crisis will be a watershed moment in our species history. Ask yourself, what is your legacy going to be? What is your choice? Your choices, given the situations that you have, are your test in this. 20 years from today, are you going to be proud of the choices that you made today? Or are you going to say, oh my God, I wish I had gotten off my backside and done something else, tried something else, right? Lord of the Rings, you remember the first of the trilogy, when they're stuck in the caves of Moria, and Frodo says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened. Gandalf said, so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Very important learning here. There's a slide here which I'll leave you to read on your own. Subsequently, it is a summary of an article in Harvard Business Review by my colleague in London Business School, Hermina Ibarra, the head of the Human Resource Faculty, about how to reinvent your career in disruptive times. And it's been put on one page by Tanmay Bora, who specializes in doing stuff like this. So study this, some very nice insights on how to work through reinventing your career. And lastly, I'm leaving a number of links here, including links to my YouTube channel, Insights with Nandu. It's not yet launched. It will be launched in the next couple of weeks, but I'm sharing the link already with you, which you can see at leisure later. Having said all of that, let me stop the broadcast, and we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. Yeah, not bad. Timing is okay.
Thank you, Professor. That was great. I see quite a lot of questions, and it's always a hard choice to start off the first question. So I'm going to look at a question that came up on my mind first. I think I should take that leeway, being the host, having somebody like you with me. I think and this is quite an important question, I guess, from all of us in the corporates especially, that as a leader, I mean, you've gone through all these crises and gone and understood responses that you should have. What qualities of an employee would you seek which would help you in deciding whether these guys will help me tide over the crisis?
Yeah, but it's very nice. Excellent question, because you have to look at the two together. You have to look at the role of the leader and the role of the team. They're both important. They have to mesh together, because don't forget, it's the role of the employee to create a culture where the team members feel empowered to come to the party and bring their best, and in fact, do stuff that they did not even dream they were able to do earlier. That's very important. Having said that, what kind of team members would I look for? The first and most important thing, I would look for team members who have skill sets that I lack.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to look for team members where there's a complementarity of skill sets. Now, what do you and I do? Normally, our default is to pack our team with people like us, people from my school. If I'm an engineer, all my team is engineers. If I'm an engineer from IIT, my whole team has to be from IIT because mere jaisa hai. If they're all like me, if they're all clones of me, then how am I going to get diverse perspectives? To get diverse perspectives, I need people who think differently. So this is a very important leadership insight. First, pick people in your team who are not like you. Second, work very hard to build them into a team and to create a culture where people feel empowered to say and to disagree with you and say what they have to say. Third, when you're picking the people, apart from the skill levels, look for attitude. Does the person come into life or into your team with a positive attitude or a negative attitude? There are many of us who are cynics, and I've come across people like that. Yeah, haan, acha, sales acha hua, but yaar, aise nahi hone wala. Just dekho, ek mahine mein dekho kya hoga. You know, I don't want cynics like that in my team. In my team, I want sale acha hua, I recognize the problem, and I'm going to make sure it comes better next. Because cynics ultimately, they drain the positive energy in the team. And I've made leadership choices. I've made team choices where I've picked people who can disagree with me, but in a positive and constructive way. Pick the attitude. Next, pick people who are problem solvers, people who don't wait for you to tell them what to do, but people who do it and come and tell you, I did that, that worked, great, it didn't work, sorry. But they take that responsibility.
Sure. Right. Great. Thank you. That was quite an elaborate answer. And there's a question from one of the audience here. So Jayashri Bhattacharya, she's asking that what is your advice to small scale industries, especially when working capital could be an issue? What would you advise them?
Yeah, Jayashri, brilliant question. And that's exactly why I showed you that video up front of that lady who runs a high-end restaurant and overnight pivoted to becoming a retail store. So one of the problems with this crisis is any industry that is reliant on operating cash flow and doesn't have the cash reserves to survive more than 60 days without an operating cash flow coming in, those industries and people are going to be stressed. Whether it's the daily wage worker, whether it's the samosa wala or the dhobi at the end of the street, or it's the SME, even large companies. Hertz has gone bust, okay? That's not an SME, it's a big company. So the first thing you have to do as a company is to recognize that you have a crisis and then see how can I conserve the cash that I do have? What are the costs that you can renegotiate? Can you renegotiate rents? Of course you can. Many people are doing that. Can you renegotiate fixed costs? Can you renegotiate with the bank? Can you reduce salaries? Starting at the top, always start with the top, but then protect your employees as much as you can, because you need these employees to turn the threat into an opportunity while everybody else of your competitors falls by the wayside. Your job is to make sure you survive. So cut costs in a smart way that the business stays alive and the people stay alive and everybody is viable to then work on the opportunity response. Then figure out what's the opportunity response. Maybe it's becoming a grocery store like that lady did. Maybe it's just staying alive long enough that all your competitors fall by the wayside and you can pick up their business. Maybe it's shifting, like many garment manufacturers, the brand name manufacturers in Europe, they've all shifted to making PPEs. So there's branded PPEs, branded masks coming out. So maybe you pivot to what is in demand at this point of time. There are alcohol manufacturers who switch from making vodka to making hand sanitizers. So you need to pivot in the short term without sacrificing your core values and your core principles, but still in the process, pivot to stay alive, but be ready to come back to your core business the moment the opportunity window opens. Yeah, it's not going to be easy, but fortune prefers the prepared mind.
Yeah, there's quite an interesting question. I think some of what you've already said sums this up, but Aman Gupta is asking, how do we emerge, as Nassim Taleb would say, anti-fragile from these crises?
Yeah, I read Nassim Taleb's article. He's writing on this, and he in his book, I think he talks about anti-fragility, and it's spot on, because you know, everybody talks about the importance of flexibility and agility, very important. But before you can be agile, before you can be flexible, you first have to stay alive. Absorption of shocks comes first. So that's why I always talk about the threat response first, stay alive, and then build the opportunity. So here's the important thing. Look, this is a COVID crisis. This will go away. There'll be another crisis that will come. Maybe the crisis will come from Google creating a new opportunity that's going to disrupt your business, but disruptions will come. The insight is this: the time to prepare for a crisis is before the crisis happens. So Nassim Taleb talks about the black swan events. There are going to be black swan events in every industry that you don't foresee, because you don't know where competition is going to come from, what's the next natural disaster that's going to happen. So prepare in advance. If it means setting aside a war chest so to survive for 6 months, putting aside some plan, doing scenario planning, doing crisis simulations and drills, do that. This is one of the rules in the 10 crisis rules I've left you with. Prepare for crisis in advance before they happen. If you don't prepare and you're caught short-handed, then like Hertz, maybe you can't survive.
Yeah, there's another similar kind of a question here, which is coming from Ravi Srivastava. So he goes to say that while it is important to think in scenarios and think in probabilities, it's tough to think in probabilities and even tougher to explain to others when the demand and forecasts goes much higher and lower. How would you address those variables?
Yeah, look, that's your leadership challenge. I cannot give you a blanket answer. What I can tell you is this: as a leader, you need to be accessible and you need to communicate with transparency and integrity. This is totally important, because the moment you bullshit your people, they'll find out, they'll smell it. If you ultimately have to let people go, and in my life, the hardest thing I had to do was to close businesses, close factories, and let people go. I've had to do it, unfortunately, a lot, and I've done it. It was the hardest thing. I didn't sleep well, but in every single case, I looked people in the eye and I told them what we were doing, and I tried to treat them with a lot of human dignity. So they went eventually, not feeling treated badly as a human, but they understood why we were doing what we were doing. They may not like it, but so when you have to do something like that as a leader, it's okay to take tough decisions. Not only okay, it's necessary to take tough decisions, but do it with humanity and let people leave with some grace and dignity. That's very, very important. But in your communication, tell them what you know, tell them what you're doing, why you're doing, and tell them what you don't know, and said, the day I know more, we'll revise this decision. And then that allows you, because then next day you can go back, you know, I told you, now we found out more, now this is a new decision, this is why we are doing it. So then they won't say, manager's doing flip-flop. They're saying, the guy is being transparent with me, and they'll actually have more respect for you. Today, more and more, leadership is not about leading formal organizations. Formal organizations, everybody reports to me and, you know, I control your salaries, that's easy. But leadership today has to go across the value chain. You have to talk to your customers, you have to lead your suppliers, you have to lead everybody. And these people don't report to you. How do you keep them motivated and buying into your value system and your quality standards? That requires a lot of communication.
Yeah, so there's a side question on leadership, and I'm glad somehow you brought this topic of leadership here, because a couple of questions have come. There's the Lance who is asking that, you know, leadership is not for everyone. It's a contrary belief that, you know, everyone can be a leader. What are your views on this? And I'll take up the second part of his question, but what are your views that, you know, leadership is not for everyone?
Yeah, look, we would need a complete a few hours to talk about leadership. It is not something I can answer in 2 minutes. Okay, there is a school of thought out there that has been often expressed that leaders are born, not made. I disagree with that. I look at my own journey, and I believe life and leadership is a continuous process of evolution. What you need from people more and more in today's environment when everything is changing, and what you need from leaders is to be a constant learner. What you need is the ability to have learning agility and continuously learn from people reporting to you, from your peers, from competitors, from leaders, from everybody, and keep working on yourself to upgrade your skills. And if you do that, I believe anyone and everyone can and should develop their leadership skills.
Thank you. And there's this question from, where did it go? Sorry, I seem to have. Yeah.
There's a question on business schools and schools going to online education. Shall I talk about that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yep. Look, before the COVID crisis happened already, I believe it was in January, or maybe it was in December, The Economist had an article, December, I think, December, November. The Economist had an article, and basically the article said the MBA is dead. Now, this is not a nice thing to read if you're an ISB or a London Business School or a Harvard. And what they said was, listen, in the last 3 years, 10 big business schools in the US have gone out of business, okay? And they basically said what is happening as a result of the availability of online education and MOOCs and Coursera and edX and all the other alphabet soup that you have around it. What is happening is that the future belongs to lifelong learning. So my generation, where I went to IIM Ahmedabad and I said, "Theek hai, done, I'm an expert for the rest of my life," that's over. Now, unless I'm able to keep learning constantly, I'm very likely to become a dinosaur. So I have to get out of that curve. Number one, lifelong learning. Number two, the lifelong learning, people want more and more at their place of work because they don't have the time to come to your institute for a course. That means more and more online learning, more and more experiential learning, more and more project-based learning, and more blended learning. A lot of online and some offline face-to-face, and you mix the two together. And the third big thing they said was that the future, basically, a lot of traditional disciplines will get unbundled. So I will say, listen, I don't want all this MBA BS, just give me blockchain. I just want blockchain. Listen, I'm not saying MBA is BS. I'm just using that as and then I'll just go do a course on blockchain and I'll apply blockchain in my work. So this unbundling. So this thing had already started before the crisis. With the COVID crisis, that has become accelerated, okay? And a lot of universities are struggling, particularly all the Australian universities, Canadian universities, which are highly dependent on overseas students coming from India and China. They don't have cash flow anymore. So they have a huge crisis. If this lasts, if the travel from India is going to be blocked for anything more than 6 months, they have a huge crisis. How do they survive? So universities have to learn how to bridge this divide, how to move from the traditional classroom session to blended learning, to online learning, to lifelong learning, to unbundling of courses. I don't want all of the electrical engineering. I just want to learn about semiconductors. Okay, fine, here's a course. So whatever it is. And also the flipped classroom. So if I'm teaching physics, why don't I just get Richard Feynman's lectures? So everybody listens to Richard Feynman's lectures instead of listening to Nandu. We may not know enough physics to teach it as well. And instead, Nandu comes to the class and says, this is what Feynman said. You all saw the video. Now let's discuss the problems and the application of what he said. So this is going to be a learning process, as it is true for individuals, as it is true for companies, it is true for universities. Universities that are able to go through this learning curve and do a rapid, because none of us know what the future is. Do a lot of experimentation, do a lot of trial and error. Maybe 50% of your, 60, 70% of your experiments will fail. That's okay, take the learning. The 30% that succeed will put you ahead of everybody else. But go out and do a lot of small pilots. The problem with universities that I've discovered is universities are places where we love to think, we love to make theories. And for every issue, whether it's right now, it's 6 o'clock or not, there will be 25 points of view. I kid you not. Yeah? Right now it's 5:56 Indian time. But if you put 10 professors in a room, they'll have 20 points of view on that also, on what the time right now is. So we love to do that. What the situation calls for is stop thinking. Just go out and try. And maybe you succeed, maybe you fail. But that trial and error process is a capability that all companies and universities and individuals have to learn.
Sure. I do get that point loud and clear, looking at what universities, but thankfully we are quite better here. There's this question, sir, if you want to look at about relationships during these times with your business partners, because there is no travel and there is restrictions placed all around. How do you sustain with your other members of the supply chain and otherwise?
Look, nothing beats communication. So if you can do face-to-face communication in a socially distanced way, do that. If you can't do that, get on Zoom, but communicate. Don't sit at home saying, I cannot do it. You can. If we can do a video communication like this, we can talk and we can have a reasonable discussion. There are many areas where online communication is actually better than offline communication. If I were to go and wear a mask like this and you don't see my face and body language, because the communication would already suffer. And seen this way, and you see the body language already, so don't write off this virtual communication. I think you could do a lot with virtual communication, but invest in good bandwidth.
Yeah, that's important in that case. So I'll like to first of all apologize to all our attendees, because we've been getting a lot of questions, and given the limited time, we are not able to do justice to each one of them. But we've tried to take the most possible here. So there's one interesting question that has been asked, and I wouldn't want to go without having asked this. Mohendra Batra is asking this because, so he's saying, if you are at a stage of starting a second zeening after your retirement, what kind of choices, given the current scenario, would you have if you thought of starting your own venture?
Play to your strengths. Make an inventory, Mohinder. What are your strengths? What are your capabilities? What's your network? Identify what are the gaps that you need to plug and go out and either do courses, new learnings, or create new networks. And then once you come up with a few ideas, don't just ideate. Go out and try it. Try it. Maybe you'll fail. That's okay. Yeah. But you learn in the process. and you will already be 100 steps ahead of the person who's just sitting at home and just ideating and not doing anything. So go out and try. There's an entire new business. Listen, there's a fitness instructor in Delhi, I forget his name, in Gurgaon. And one of my friends goes to the fitness instructor. All gyms closed down, so he can't teach anymore. So he just started doing fitness training on Instagram. And initially he gave it free, 8 to 9 p.m. every day on Instagram. And he got 1,200 people. Then he started charging them. He's charging them 2,000 rupees per month for just floor body weight exercises. He's got 1,300 people who've signed up. That's 26 lakhs a month. A fitness instructor. There's no way he would have done that if he'd said, "Gym band ho gaya, main kya karoon, baith ke main Netflix dekhta hu." Yeah, fine, that's okay. That's a valid strategy. But he did something, right? And he succeeded. That's fantastic.
I think that pretty much sums up, the attitude that one must have, as a premise to the entire session that you took. So, with your permission, sir, should we close? If you have any closing remarks.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and wonderful to speak to all of you. And if you want to listen to more, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. There will be posts on it soon, I promise.
Thank you so much, sir, on behalf of everyone here at Flame University and all the large number of attendees who are here today. It was a great session, and thank you for sharing your experiences and coming down, talking to us here. Once again, big thank you.
Thank you all. Pleasure.
To all of you who have joined us on this session, thanks for coming over and turning out in large numbers. Our next webinar in the Connection series, which looks at connecting the dots in an interdisciplinary approach. We've got Professor Prateek Shah, who's a faculty for computer science at Flame University, who will be talking to us on reassembling education in the digital age. Sir, he's going to talk on how this is going to happen. So do join us next week, on Saturday, 28th, from 5 to 6 p.m. Wish you a very good evening from all of us at Flame. Thank you.